You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of August 9th, 2024. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where we mark the 50th anniversary of the resignation of Tricky Dick Nixon by asking the ritual question.
Hey, Jerry. Here's my question. How the hell could you pardon Nixon?
It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal.
Podcast on Tuesday.
Right.
And you were on the Bradcast yesterday.
Right.
And I did my knitting podcast yesterday.
Right.
And so it's now Thursday, and so there's no news left, right?
We used it all up. We used up all the news. We're very sorry. You will now hear some elevator music and a pitch to send us $5 and a fond farewell.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yep.
The state fair opened today with the butter cow.
That is always true. There's nothing to report other than the fact that State Fair opened today, and thanks to a governor who actually believes in investing in those things, the fairgrounds apparently look way better than they've looked in decades. It was decrepit, falling apart, flooded, and it looks great now, apparently. The butter cow has, in fact, returned, so big ups for that. That's a international draw. Rumor has it that J.D. Vance was in town because he'd heard that we were featuring a butter couch, but those rumors remain unconfirmed.
A butter couch that he thought was rich and creamy and would melt.
Butter couch.
Under him. Yes.
Oh,
yeah, okay.
Baby. Slick and smooth.
Speaking of Donald Trump's Renfield, J.D. Vance, today we're going to talk about something we all experience at one time or another. I mean, I know I do.
Yep.
And that people campaigning for the highest office in the land experience every hour of every day during the campaign at a level, you know, you and I will not experience this.
Ever in our lifetimes.
Pressure, pushing down on me, pressing down on you, no man has fallen.
Pressure, the force that George Patton said makes diamonds.
Yup. Pressure makes diamonds. And Hemingway defined courage as grace under pressure. So you and I, Blue Gal, are going to talk about pressure today. And how each of the players in this very weird year of 2024 have responded to pressure, the political pressure of the year 2024. Believe it or not, because time has no meaning anymore. It has only been, as I'm speaking these very words, I did the math in my head, it's only been 42 days since the Biden-Trump debate. Can you believe it? Only 42 days. 26 days since a mentally ill Republican took a shot at Donald Trump. 24 days since Trump was told by his benefactors that he damn well better put J.D. Vance on the ticket. And 20 days since the Republicans held the worst nominating convention in history. And
it was so puny. I've been to weddings that were bigger than that convention.
But have you been to weddings where Hulk Hogan and a porn star were like center stage attractions?
No. And mentioned as an influencer.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a thing.
Yeah.
And it was low energy, and it was creepy, and it was everything you would expect from a dying Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
And in all that time, that very brief time, in the last 42 days, the political universe has been completely upended in totally unprecedented ways, never experienced before in our lifetime, 3 different times.
Yep. First up, President Joe Biden stepped aside.
Mm-hmm.
Vice President Kamala Harris stepped up, and Joe Biden immediately gave her his unequivocal endorsement.
Yes, he did.
Now, despite hysterics from elite pundits and podcasters and a lot of crackpot ideas that all boil down to keeping Kamala Harris off the top of the ticket, we're going to play a game and have Lego men represent candidates, and I get to move them around where I want them to be.
Yes.
You know, Hollywood actors said. Instead of that, the base and the delegates backed her up and quickly consolidated behind her. And the third thing that happened is she named Tim Walz as her vice presidential candidate.
Absolutely. And you and I watched it on live television.
Mhm.
We broke our MSNBC embargo to watch that one thing on live TV. So over the past 40 plus days, give or take, how have the various players coped with the various pressures they have faced? So let's start with Joe Biden, who got thanked yesterday at the rally
Mhm.
and who will have an enormous and grateful audience at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago.
Mhm. Mhm.
It was Joe Biden who kept his own counsel, despite liberal elites storming the op-ed pages and demanding that he get out now, out now, leave immediately, that his ego was out of control. That was why we were all doomed, because he was an egomaniac. That Jill Biden was basically Lady Macbeth, pulling the strings behind the scenes. And while they were acting like children, Joe Biden went about the business of being president. And he did it calmly and professionally. He didn't lose his head. He didn't start tearing assholes on social media. He sized up the situation like a pro, and he weighed the pros and the cons, and he did what he believed was in the best interest of the country, like he always does.
Secondly, Kamala Harris, who the entire punditocracy has simultaneously written off as a political dud and slapped around because she wasn't, overruling and overshadowing Biden, the president.
Right.
Why wasn't she ruling by decree? And, at the same time, she has instituted a coup against Biden.
That's
also.
right. That's clear. Absolutely.
It's Obama all over again.
Yeah, it is.
Obama's feckless and at the same time a egomaniac, world-dominating supervillain, right?
Right. Exactly.
So they held Kamala, though, to standards that no other vice president has ever been held to, including Joe Biden, by the way.
Right. Remember, the most proactive vice president in modern history was a guy named Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
Who lied us into the wrong war and then fucked that war up. So, maybe keep that to yourself. Maybe keep that vice president should be running over the president and doing whatever they want to yourself.
Yep. The media held Kamala Harris to standards that no other vice president has ever been held to, and they pronounced her a failure and politically dead. Now, admittedly, the situations are not the same, but when Harry Truman was told that FDR had died and he was now the president, Truman said, "I don't know if any of you have had a bale of hay fall on you. Well, I feel like the sun, the stars, and all the planets just fell on me. Don't expect too much of me," unquote. And he also almost kicked somebody who congratulated him. Congratulations, Mr. President. Do not congratulate me.
This is not
a good thing.
This is not a good day.
This is the worst day of my life. Right.
Exactly.
The person who broke the news to him was Eleanor Roosevelt when he arrived at the White House.
Your hero.
Yeah, my personal hero. It's true. And she told him, "The president is dead." Truman asked, "Is there anything I can do for you?" Mrs. Roosevelt replied, "Is there anything we can do for you? For you are the one in trouble now."
Yeah. There's this World War II going on, and we're winning, and it looks like we're doing really well, but the world needs to be remade and rebuilt, and this is now all on your desk.
I remember hearing about JFK.
Oh, yeah.
Bowing to Eleanor Roosevelt and saying, "Please go ahead of me into the White House." And she's like, No,
this is your job now.
This is your job now. And he said, "Oh, I keep forgetting." She said, "You must never forget.
This is the job that killed my husband."
Yeah, she knows. She knew exactly what the office of the presidency was.
The pressure. And Roosevelt is such a great example because in the middle of the Depression, at the worst moment in history of the United States, as far as anyone knew, he was preaching confidence.
Yeah.
And happy days are here again. And we're going to get through this. He was ebullient. He was happy. He was a happy warrior, which reminds me a whole lot of the people who are now at the top of the Democratic ticket.
Right.
Now, Kamala Harris had expected to campaign as Joe Biden's vice president. Wingman, go to funerals, go to the Senate, settle tie votes. And now suddenly she was being asked to carry the whole ball, everything, all of it. And when you consider the stakes of this election, the enormous stakes of this election, it's fair to say she was being asked by the president of the United States to save the world.
At the very least, our democracy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're that which stands between, Russia rolling through Europe.
Mhm.
We're the ones who stand right at the edge of democracies failing around the world. And I would ask you to think, how would any of us have reacted to that kind of pressure? That kind of once in a lifetime, once in a generation pressure. The weight of the world is suddenly dropped on you, even as elite pundits and prognosticators and podcasters in your own fucking party were making clear they really, really didn't want it to be you, anybody but you.
Yeah. And I want to make it clear, she's got a lot of stamina and power. She's also got a lot of ambition.
Yep.
And as every politician in the country does. But please proceed.
No, but she showed, in Hemingway's words, courage, grace under unimaginable pressure. Even as assholes like David Axelrod were practically hand-feeding negative stories to Fox News, she was handling it, she was doing really well, and she was out there doing a great job. Then, from a very deep bench of excellent prospects, she chose a relatively obscure Midwestern Democratic governor who was not J.B. Pritzker.
Thank God.
Thank God. She listened to us. She said, no, you can't have him.
She did.
No.
She listened to us. Yes, she did.
He's busy here. We have butter cows to unveil. Okay?
Butter cows.
But she chose Tim Walz, who I referred to yesterday on the Brad Show as Uncle Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Big Midwestern Blaine's Farm and Fleet dad energy in his kind of ag leisure Carhartt wardrobe.
I love that term, ag leisure. Did you come up with that, or did you see that someplace else?
I'm sure I did, and I'm sure if we wait a year, Rick Wilson will be using it constantly. And then there'll be a button behind Charlie Sykes' desk where he says, "Oh, this is great, this ag leisure thing. I just love it so much." And I'll just cry and cry. But you know what? If that's what it takes to get these two in the White House, I'm for it. Steal it. Take it. Run away with it.
Ag leisure. Walz walked onto the national stage for the first time on Tuesday and blew the doors off the place. He's just so joyful.
He is.
Not nervous, not angry. He's affable, happy, has a great family. You kept saying, was he built in a lab somewhere?
Seriously. The commercials, the ads with him and his daughter are just like, man, that's just dad stuff down to the bone.
Well, and you've taught two female children how to drive.
I have.
So,
and believe me, I can spot them.
We have a video on our YouTube channel of middle child's eye rolls.
They are many.
Many.
He clearly has a great relationship with his wife, and who's a public school teacher, a great relationship with his kids.
Yeah. You kept saying, my mom.
My mom would love this guy.
You're talking about your mother, yes.
My mother, the public school teacher for more than 40 years, would love this guy. My dad, who was a Nixon-Reagan Republican, would probably vote for him because my dad was a principal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when they divorced, he married a principal, she married a teacher. My sister was a teacher. My former brother-in-law was a teacher. So the fact that that's the background this guy comes out of, and out of the Midwest, is just speaking to me very strongly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. He was obviously very comfortable in his own skin. Apparently, he didn't know quite how to read a teleprompter. That's endearing as far as I'm concerned, but that's something that happened. This, by the way, his blowing the doors off in Philadelphia was after Kamala Harris had blown the doors off the place, which was after Governor Josh Shapiro, who I think you might be looking at the next Attorney General of the United States. I think he probably gets what he wants.
Yeah.
In the cabinet if he wants to leave the governorship of Pennsylvania. And I was on the phone with Junior Dude about this, who called me multiple times this week to catch me up on what's happening with the Democratic race for president. Mm-hmm. And he said, I really thought that Josh Shapiro would be a good one, but the more I read about Walz, the more I like him. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's kind of the reaction I think a lot of people are having. And Josh Shapiro's speech, if you haven't heard it, it might be worth going back and listening to it, because he borrowed a little something from the Professional Left podcast, Driftglass.
He did one of our sub-podcasts.
Yes. A mantra of remember.
Remember.
And that is so important, because there are a large number of voters out there, and certainly an infinite number of media personalities out there who can't do what a 10-month-old baby can do. master object permanence.
Now,
When they
do
see
people-
Trump, they go, oh, that Trump. No, I don't like him. And his numbers go down.
Yeah.
When Trump steps off the stage, oh, Trump wasn't so bad.
It's
The price of eggs.
Yeah. After 10 months, a baby stops being fooled by peekaboo.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're gone. Oh, now you're here. But these idiots, they really just, if he's off the stage, they like him. If he's on the stage, they have their doubts. And I got to wonder, these people vote. So
These people vote.
You've got to remember that these are just simple farmers. These are people of the land. The common clay of the New West. Morons.
They have zero attention span, and they make themselves feel smart by blaming everything on the system, the duopoly, Congress, Washington. Both sides.
both sides, Yeah. If only I had it's a third party independent, really. That's
I'm
the way to go.
I'm really an independent constitutional conservative.
Yeah.
They couldn't name their own congressperson if you held a bazooka to their heads. A lot of them.
Mhm.
And I know this is depressing for those of us that are news junkies, that these people need to be reminded over and over and over and over and over again what Trump's presidency was actually like.
Yeah.
A Muslim ban.
Yeah.
Build the wall scam run by Steve Bannon.
Child separation. Making
Child
states-
separation.
pitting states against each other for personal protective gear
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
holding it over their heads if they didn't please him, using his property, pimping out his properties to raise money, ripping off the Secret Service
Yep.
for
Yep.
personal profit, going overseas and making all kinds of dirty deals, putting his children and his son-in-law, his corrupt-ass son-in-law, in the White House with no security clearance,
Right.
private back channel shit to Russia, on and on. It's a gargantuan list, and they don't remember any of it.
Right. And then we get to January 6th and the
Yeah.
fact that there was a coup, an attempted coup.
Mm-hmm.
And let's also remember that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done a great job cleaning up Trump's mess.
Yeah.
And let me say, just as an aside, cleaning up Reagan's mess
Oh, yeah. And Bush's mess.
and Bush's mess.
Yeah.
But really, the anti-Reaganomics, diminishing the impact and reversing 40 years of Reaganomics,
Yeah.
and getting back to being pro-union. I mean, Joe Biden has accomplished a tremendous amount.
And one final thing about these voters, I would be happy if they would just remember that Donald Trump was president during 2020.
Yeah.
The number of times that I've gotten eye rolls of people, Harris and Biden, recession 2020. And they really can't do simple math without taking their shoes and socks off, which is depressing as hell. Now, on a much happier note, we got a letter from listener Matt that really speaks to us, and I'm going to read the whole thing. Hello. Quote, longtime listener and contributor, but less frequent writer. I wanted to pass along a listener's experience under Walz. I didn't vote for him in the gubernatorial primary in 2017. I wanted my candidates as left as I can get. Being an adult, I, of course, voted for him in the general and could not be happier with the legislative progress that happened here when we voted in a state-level trifecta. I won't repeat the victories to you here, but will reiterate that the state Senate was a tight balance and many successes came under a divided legislature. Oh my goodness, he had to work across the aisle. Music to center-right Republicans' ears if they ever hear this.
Mm-hmm.
Our family has met Tim 3 times now. Once at the Minnesota State Fair. Hey, look at it. They got him too. It's a big deal here. Yes, please come. You come on down here. See our cow.
Come down here and see our butter cow.
Yeah. Once at a protest march against Trump family separation, he thanked us for bringing the kids to the march, saying it's important, and complimented my daughter's nevertheless she persisted t-shirt. That's that big dad energy.
That's big dad energy, and that's Elizabeth Warren t-shirt too.
Sure as hell is. The last time I saw him was at our church. He came to worship there before swearing in as governor.
You mean I thought he was a commie atheist liberal.
We all are, Blue Gal. Going to church is just a cover for our secret communist plot.
Is my morning Bible study also a cover up for my communism and Atheism.
It's have they ever read the New Testament? Have they ever
Exactly.
read what Jesus actually said about any of this shit? Of course not.
About the poor.
About the poor, about the people in jail, about immigrants,
Yeah.
about children. No, they've never read a lick of it, or it never sunk in. Anyway, the last time at blah 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 at church, and he came before swearing in. I greeted him again and thanked him for coming. He gave a warm smile and said, "Thanks for having me." Each encounter, he was kind and authentic. I saw the same personality you saw on TV, and he's been the same policy warrior in Minnesota that you saw in his debut speech. Our neighbor was a student of Tim's. He said, quote, "He was the kind of teacher that made you want to be a better person." Jesus. Just as a teacher, is there a higher compliment? No, there isn't.
No,
that
there is
is
not.
what you're shooting for. Back to the letter. Needless to say, I think he's a great addition to the ticket. I haven't been this excited since 2008. Let's do this.
Let's do this.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
So that's how Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are handling the pressure.
Right.
You know, making it into a diamond and a great campaign. And they're doing it gracefully. And they have a staff that is competent. And they have an advance team that's competent. And they're happy and they're joyful. They speak the language of hope and aspirations, of freedom and the future, and love for country and love for democracy. And unlike previous Democratic campaigns, this time, Democrats are learning the virtue of punching back hard. And smart, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our listener, Ravi, notes, quote, "One thing I realized, Tim Walz has the leeway and the privilege," I believe she means as a white guy, "to savage and humiliate Trump and Vance in a way Kamala can't. Kamala could not have said the couch joke. That is true."
Right on. Absolutely true.
Unquote. That's really a very smart analysis. As a wag on Twitter said, quote, "Tim Walz is the dad an entire generation wishes they had instead of the one they lost to Fox News."
Yeah.
And the Harris campaign is using him exactly right.
Yep.
Because they have, again, a competent staff.
Competent team. They know what they're doing. And back there as well is an old political veteran named Joe Biden. I'm sure lending his hand and his political wisdom to the whole
And all his
mix.
people moved over. And his merch team moved over.
So that's how the Democrats are handling their pressure. Meanwhile, on the other side, the right has absolutely lost its damn mind because they thought they had it in the bag. They thought this was going to be a fucking layup. Low pressure. Didn't need to do much of anything. All they had to do was keep Trump on a short leash, keep him quiet. Small, controlled media exposure. And the rest of the time, who cared? He could go golf. He could rave on social media because the news is never going to cover that anyway. Well, his campaign ran itself. They all got rich. And J.D. Vance got the base fired up because J.D. Vance is the man. That was the plan. The problem was that was the only plan. And suddenly that plan is as dead as Dillinger. Now Harris and Walz are surging in the polls. Now Trump has lost control of the news cycle. Now the pressure's really on, and they have no idea what to do. So they are panicking publicly, which is awesome. I'm totally there for that. And since they have no plan, they're rolling out all the old rusted artillery pieces and all the corroded ammunition from yesteryear and trying to make the magic work again.
Yeah, Private Bone Spurs is actually trying to swift boat Tim Walz without the swift or the boat. And the number of people that I have seen call this out as swift boating.
Right.
You can only do this once.
Right. Only get away with it once.
You only get away with it once, and you did, and someone else did. The Bush administration did.
Yep.
And now you can't do it again. It doesn't work. This is from Josh Marshall, quote, "The New York Times," and, you know, Josh Marshall doesn't say the New York fucking Times, but he should. He
really should. That's their official name. Yeah.
"Spent about a year producing stories based on the hit book Clinton Cash." Yes, they did.
Yes,
and
they sure
part
did.
of the reason they did that is Rudy Giuliani had the New York FBI office by the balls, and all of them were basing their messaging on that book, which the author finally said, well, I don't have any evidence of this.
Right.
And of course, Clinton Cash was funded by Steve Bannon, who's now, where is Steve Bannon, Driftglass?
Under
I haven't
the jail.
seen him lately. Where
I
is
believe
he?
he's under the jail, writing his manifesto.
Manifesto in jail.
Yeah.
I mean, how does a publication like the New York Times ever live something like that down? Said Josh Marshall. And now they're taking Oppo right from the guy who ran the Swift boaters. Amazing.
Yeah. This is from Talking Points memo. Josh Marshall is joined. 20 years later, political press still falls hard for Swift boat attacks. Quote, J.D. Vance launched a spurious and baseless attack on Tim Walz's military service, reminiscent of the Swift boat attacks in 2004 that targeted one of John Kerry's key political strengths, his heroism and valor in Vietnam. But instead of using the last 20 years to reflect and reconsider the familiar coverage patterns, some political editors still get played like a fiddle when it comes to covering GOP attack lines. The Washington Post is probably the worst culprit with this headline, quote, Tim Walz military record National Guard departure gets new scrutiny. It happily launders the Vance attack line without self-awareness or historical understanding of the last 2 decades of American politics. New scrutiny, like its weasel word compadres, raises questions about and is said to confers a miraculous virgin birth to scurrilous political attacks, even if they're launched right out in the open. To its credit, Politico is much more direct and puts the attack in the broader context with a story headlined, Vance runs a swift boat attack against Walz military service. Boom. You might quibble with Politico's handling of it, but it's clearly not the same laundering operation the Washington Post ran on this one. The irony of the Vance attack and the media coverage of it is that the originator of the swift boat attack against Kerry back in the day was Chris LaCivita, who is now a senior Trump campaign advisor, unquote. And, as Jane Mayer of The New Yorker pointed out on Twitter X, quote, remember when John Kerry was swift-boated by Chris LaCivita, who's doing it now to Tim Walz? Guess who funded it? Harlan Crow, the billionaire who's been lavishing freebies on Clarence Thomas, unquote. They're all in on it, and they're all fucking evil.
And Peter Baker is repeating today on Twitter when the news is about Donald Trump absolutely shitting the bed again in a so-called press conference that he hastily put together at Mar-a-Lago to try to grab some headlines back. And what does Peter Baker start tweeting about? Prosecutors alleging blah, blah, blah about what? Hunter Biden.
Yeah. He's such a fucking puppet.
It's just absurd.
Yeah. And we all know it. It's all happening out in the open.
Yeah. But we know how to punch back, and we know how to punch back hard.
Yes. Yeah.
This is Naval Reserve and Iraq War veteran Pete Buttigieg. Quote, come to think of it, denigrating the worth of a soldier's service based on whether he deployed to a war zone is kind of like denigrating the worth of a woman's citizenship based on whether she happens to have children, unquote. And this from Kamala HQ. You really got to follow them. Lordy, there are tapes. Quote, unearthed audio Trump tells Tim Walz in 2020 he is, quote, very happy, unquote, with his handling of George Floyd protests. I fully agree with the way he handled it. Tim Walz is an excellent guy, unquote. And you know that Tim Walz played along with Trump and played Trump to get what he wanted from him.
Of course.
And so at the time, of course, Trump had nothing but nice things to say about Tim Walz. And we've got all that on audio.
Got to remember. That's our secret weapon.
It's remember. And the number one guy out there lying about stolen valor, because it's his job, is Sofa King himself, J.D. Vance. Remind me again what Vance's job was when he was deployed to Iraq.
You a photographer?
No, I'm a combat correspondent.
Oh, you seen much combat?
Well, I've seen a little on TV.
So if If J.D. Vance wants to relitigate the Iraq War and his job as a propagandist for the Iraq War or bone spurs in Vietnam, I say bring it on. Let's have a long, mediated conversation about those things. But really, I think Vance is proving to be perhaps the greatest secret weapon the Democrats have.
Oh, seriously.
He was supposed to be the secret lab where Republicans could mix up a winning working class message. And instead, he's turning out to be the party's basement meth lab that keeps blowing up in their face every time they try to do anything. I mean, who on earth thought it would be a great idea for Vance to stalk Kamala Harris's plane at the Eau Claire, Wisconsin airport while he kept his crowd of literally tens of people bored and waiting for his dumb rally to start?
Oh, my God.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you I had a visceral reaction to that when I saw J.D. Vance stalking Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
You know, going behind her massive crowd and behind her event. You know, Beavis and Butthead style.
Yeah.
And it's creepy. It's weird. It's threatening.
Mm-hmm.
And women are going to be really bothered by that if they're not already bothered by him.
Yeah.
And they are already bothered by him because there's, again, video of him saying women should stay with an abusive partner for the sake of the kids.
Yeah. He's their guy.
I could go on, as you know, Driftglass, for many hours about that.
Yes, you could.
So could many, many women out there go
Millions
on
of
for
women.
several hours about their children and the need to protect them, and et cetera, and the consequences of all of that, and the sacrifices that you make. I'm going to stop now, but we could all go on for hours.
Well, thanks to the rake factory through which J.D. Vance keeps tap dancing, they cannot shake the weird label because it's true. So what do? If you're a well-oiled campaign machine and you want to get rid of that weird label, what do? You dispatch creepy Nazi weirdo Stephen Miller to go on Fox News to stop the bleeding. This is a creepy Nazi weirdo Stephen Miller. Quote, Tim Walz' job is to be the Jack Kevorkian for Merca. His job is to be the assisted suicide doctor, to lean over charmingly by the bedside of America and give it a fatal injection, unquote. Yeah, great job, weirdo. Great job. I mean, you look at this guy.
So odd and mentally unstable, and
they don't have anybody normal to send out. So, failing that, let's move to creepy Nazi weirdo number one, Donald Trump, phoning it into Fox News, presumably from the crapper. Quote, this is a ticket that would want this country to go communist immediately, if not sooner. He's very heavy into transgender. Anything transgender he thinks is great. I think it's very insulting to Jewish people, unquote.
What? I'm sorry, what?
He's insane. And that's the problem. The plan was to keep the crazy man in the basement or out on the golf course 95% of the time. Then dope him up on whatever will calm him down, feed him 3 lines, and put him in front of a camera.
But Driftglass, that was the plan while he was president, too.
I know, Bluebell. And it worked so well. But, people have object permanence issues. They don't remember that at all.
His staff, he had a better staff then.
Yes, he
did.
That
would whisk him to the golf course so that he would not, incriminate himself on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Because something was on Fox that was obviously going to make him mad. And now there's a lot of things on Fox that are making him mad. Because it turns out, and I did want to bring this up, this isn't in our script or show notes. The cable news outlets, including Fox, have figured out that airing Kamala Harris rallies live improves ratings.
What? What do you say?
And so here's Trump, fresh from the golf course, turning on Fox, and Kamala's there.
And he's screaming.
That's why he had to hold a press conference this afternoon.
Me, look at me.
And then, of course, he's nuts.
Speaking of the press conference.
And we prepared for the show while Trump was giving his so-called press conference, at which he said, she picked a radical left man he has positions that are not even possible to believe that they exist. He is going for things that nobody has even heard of. heavy into the transgender world, heavy into lots of different worlds.
Yeah.
And nobody asked him, what worlds are you talking about? What specifically do you mean? No, it's things nobody has ever heard of. Now, Alex Cole tweeted, Kamala doesn't need to do interviews when Trump goes on television and shits all over his own campaign.
Yeah.
She's a prosecutor. You don't interrupt a criminal when he's telling on himself.
Yeah. That's Napoleon's advice.
Yeah.
Never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. The entire campaign, the Trump campaign, is a massive mistake. Let them have all the airtime they want.
Yeah. And every time he announces an event, go on Facebook or Twitter or wherever you are on social media, Threads, wherever you are, and say, is he dropping out?
Yeah. Is he dropping out yet?
Is he dropping out yet? Because really, that's the alternative right now. He should be dropping out, right?
Well, and just as a brief aside, because I keep track of a lot of these assholes, the pomade that walks like a man, Byron York.
Oh, God.
Today was, his big scandal was, Tim Walz wasn't the head coach. He was just an assistant coach.
Oh, my God.
And that was the big scandal, that he was able to dig up all by his little self with little tiny, soft little hands. He was able, and then somebody 10 seconds later ran video of Tim Walz saying, well, yeah, I was the defensive coordinator. I was the assistant coach. He never lied about it. It's just, that's how fucking desperate they are to find anything at all.
It didn't matter what level of coach you were in my high school.
Right.
You were called coach.
Coach,
you weren't called Mr. ever.
No. Because the alternative is to call you biology teacher, which was how it worked at our school.
Yes,
or
exactly.
driver's ed guy. But no, everybody was a coach. Anybody with a whistle was a coach.
Well, and when I graduated with my master's in education, the next day there was a job fair. And at the entrance to the job fair was a woman from the Alabama Department of Education. And I introduced myself and she said, what department will you be teaching in? And I said, social studies. She said, those jobs go to coaches.
Yeah, no.
I just finished 2.5 years
right.
of getting a master's degree in education. And the Alabama Department of Education is there to slam down the gate as soon as I've spent all that money and all that time and 2 babies in diapers. Yeah, just don't get me started. Okay. I wanted to give Chris Hayes a little award for understatement of the week. He tweeted these 3 words, boy, I dunno.
Yeah. And I gotta give my wife credit because she knowingly put that in there, knowing that it was written by Aaron Sorkin. So
Aaron Sorkin, boy, I don't know.
Boy,
and
I don't know.
I really don't like West Wing, but yes. But that was a very good way of encapsulating George W. Bush. It really was.
Crime, boy.
I don't know.
Yeah. And then there was the great last glorious hope of the Never Trumpers. The last woman standing in the breach, who could not be corrupted or tempted by power, who was going to stand up to Donald Trump and redeem the Republican Party no matter the cost. And her name is Nikki Haley. And today or yesterday, sometime this week, she bid the last shred of her soul and dignity a fond farewell. This is her, quote, Democrats doubling down on the progressive movement. Walz, misspelled, is a win for open borders, socialism, and Iran, unquote.
And she misspelled Tim Walz's name.
She did. Because, she didn't have a lot of time, apparently, to check into these things. And that's how Republicans are handling the pressure.
A win for Iran.
Yeah. They're handling their pressure that they're now under to actually do something to get Trump to the White House, to run a campaign. They're handling it by collapsing, by running in circles and screaming hateful nonsense, because there are no adults or normal people left in the party to stop them. There's no check on it. There's no brakes in this party. All they have is the hatred of their deranged base and a candidate who has clearly lost his fucking mind. And of course, a compliant media that's more than willing to launder Trump's lies into headlines. And I'm looking at you, Washington Post. In fact, I'm looking at you repeatedly, Washington Post. New York Times, you're a close second. This is from Dan Frumkin at presswatchers.org. Quote, in case you want to understand the context of Washington Post campaign coverage going forward, The Post's simpering editorial board says Kamala Harris failed to, quote, prove that she could resist pressure from the party's left and now needs to tack to the center, unquote. And of course, there are also allies of ours who are still bitching about the choice of Tim Walz. Can you guess who they might be, Boudel?
Do you listen to them on your little earbuds all day long?
I know I don't anymore. I
Oh,
listen
yeah,
to
that's
CBS
right.
Radio Mystery Theater and radio
That's
show.
right.
I don't listen to the Bulwark. I don't listen to them with the kind of ear that I used to, but I think it's my obligation as a liberal in the Midwest to listen to what's going on over there among people to whom the keys to the liberal media kingdom were handed without any asking of anything in return. And these people really, really, really want the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, to be Republican light. So they're all about, and they say it themselves, this election may come down to like 9 people in Pennsylvania, but those people are our people. So pander to what we want. Turn the entire Democratic Party into Reagan light to make us comfortable. And they're not shy about doing that. And this was Tim Miller and Sarah Longwell bitching about the Democrats not choosing Josh Shapiro because he was a sure win. He would have delivered Pennsylvania like he's going to leave the country, like he's going to refuse to campaign for them. Instead of Tim Walz, who they swear, Tim Walz is just what, urban liberals think Midwesterners are like. And I'm like, asshole, I'm in Illinois. We are the Midwest podcast. We can tell you all kinds of things about the Midwest. You don't know shit about us. And that's the problem. These people never understood their own party base until the party ran them out. And they don't understand the Democratic Party base. The only thing they have is this kind of hazy nostalgia for the good old days of Ronald Reagan. And they really want to turn our party into that, a party that would welcome Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney with open arms. And that's all I have to say about them, other than the fact that, they're still going to be on MSNBC every day for the rest of my life.
Right. I want to talk for just a moment about ActBlue and WinRed.
Oh, clear the field. Yeah, that's your
clear the
specialty.
field. This is my bugaboo. And I got in a fight with somebody about this today, so it caused me to go and do research and find links and make sure that I was backing up what I was saying on social media.
Oh, no,
and
you care about facts and stuff?
I care about facts, and I care about donors to political campaigns. And I genuinely do not care who they are donating to. I don't like seeing people get ripped off. And I fear what it does to our democracy when a political party rips off donors. And I see that happening with WinRed, and I'm concerned about it. And I've said all of this, that WinRed is a private company that hides behind, being a private company and not revealing where their money goes. And ActBlue is a nonprofit that has to report what they do financially. And when there are investigations into these things, WinRed sues to keep their books private, and ActBlue cooperates.
Right.
And they cooperate with investigations, and they open their books, and they show what they're doing, and they cooperate. And you know how I know they cooperate? I have a source, Driftglass, that came out today, this morning.
A deep throat, if you will. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't want to think about it that way, but a press release was issued today from the most corrupt Republican attorney general in the entire country, Ken Paxton of Texas. And the headline of this press release from Ken Paxton's office says this: Attorney General Ken Paxton's ongoing investigation into ActBlue. And then, okay, what happened? You did an ongoing investigation into ActBlue. Oh my God.
Must be bad.
Are you going to put people in jail? Ken Paxton with your investigation? Ken Paxton's ongoing investigation into ActBlue yields cooperation. He got cooperation from ActBlue on donor credit card identification. And this is where Republicans are going with this, which is, you know what? ActBlue doesn't require the CVV number on a credit card to take a charge. And that means it could open the door to false charges, blah, blah, blah. And so ActBlue is saying, okay.
That's fine. We'll
We'll
fix it.
start requiring CVV card numbers when we
What else?
take donations. Okay.
Cool.
And the House Republicans, who are also investigating ActBlue because they only have 6 more months to chair any committees, there is just a shitload of articles about this in Murdoch's New York Post, which is then read on the air by Fox and Friends as a totally separate news. This New York Post article is really interesting, as if they're not both Murdoch properties.
And then it'll show up in a Wall Street Journal editorial.
Exactly.
An area of concern.
As mentioned as an area of concern, and people are talking about this, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But you know who is missing from all of these New York Post articles and Fox and Friend pieces and so forth? Who is just completely evaporated from these this particular news cycle?
Who?
James Comer. James Comer is nowhere to be found investigating ActBlue. He's not doing it. He's not there. You can't find him. He is blown and burned and gone because he's no longer useful.
Right. He's disposable.
And
He's an old condom.
He failed. Yeah. And, Peter Baker's still mentioning slipping in a little Hunter Biden in between all of the good Kamala Harris news that's coming out. By the way, Hunter Biden.
No, James Comer didn't just fail. James Comer was humiliated at his own committee repeatedly.
Yes, and shit all over the place, with no recourse to saving his face. Yeah.
No.
He's gone.
And he had to run on Fox.
Gone.
Run on Fox all the time and say, well, we're finding stuff.
And what we really meant, right. What we really meant is, right. No.
And that's a kind of important thing for you all to remember. When these people are doing this stuff, when they're screaming about, Dr. Kevorkian, blah, 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 they're not talking to anybody but their base.
Right.
They're only talking to the crazy base because they can't lose anybody. No. They're not expanding their voting base at all. They have to hang on to the voters they have because they have become so fucking toxic that only the worst weirdos are going to want to vote for them. And so they have to hang.
And we don't talk about this, and I know why. I know why the media doesn't talk about this, but the number of Republicans who have died since 2020 through acts of violence or getting old or getting cancer or whatever it is, we don't talk about mortality rates in this country on the news. We don't.
Or COVID.
And I get why. It's not fun to talk about that. Let's have another Jardiance commercial instead. But, they've lost a lot of their base.
Yeah.
And the audiences at the Harris Walls, the 20,000 people in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I'm sure many of whom came from Minnesota, to come on over. We have to mention, by the way, Laura Ingraham.
Oh, please.
I know a thing about Minnesota, and let me tell you, Milwaukee has really changed.
Really?
Yes. So, and the notes, the helpful community notes on Twitter were, Milwaukee isn't in Minnesota. It's in Wisconsin.
Sorry, honey. Yeah, geography and everything else that's based on facts or logic or timelines is not an area.
You know who you could talk to about geography? Tim Walz.
Yeah, he knows. He knows that.
He taught geography for many years.
Mm-hmm. And that audience at the rally, not a lot of them were going from the rally to get the senior discount at IHOP.
No, there were young. That's what I wanted to say. There were young people there.
Yeah.
And a lot of moms
people.
Demand Action people.
Yeah.
It's a new audience.
It's a new day, people. Happy days are here again. Now, don't get happy. There's a lot of work to do. 90 days to the election. A lot of work for all of us to do. But directionally, things are looking more positive than they have in a long time.
Right.
And I do want to thank, again, the Bradcast with Brad Friedman and Desi Doyen and Digby. She and I were on at the same time. We had a blast. It was a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun. It's a PG version of this podcast. No swearing allowed.
It's a PG version of this. It's a PG version of this podcast with bonus Californians.
Yeah, a lot of Californians. You can tell they're from California. And
yes, you can. Bless their hearts.
I steer into the Midwest awesomeness that, let's take it back to California. Let's bring it back to the coast. And that's fine. I understand that. But, the blessings on them for acknowledging that the Midwest exists and that there are people in it like us who have things to say about politics that And Brad, bless his heart, says, both Digby and Driftglass, and when you're on there, Blue Gal, you too, have been mostly right about most everything for 20 years. So maybe people like them are worth listening to.
Hey, Driftglass, let's do a news roundup. The Bidening continues. President Joseph Robinette Biden, he's the president, Driftglass.
He is.
But he's not confident at all that there will be a peaceful transfer of power if Trump loses the election. He means it. All the stuff about if we lose, there'll be a bloodbath, Biden said in an interview with CBS News.
Now, wait a minute. Joseph Biden, if I understand correctly, if I'm watching Fox News, I thought he had been institutionalized for irrevocable mental decline or something and couldn't speak words.
He's president of the United States. He's busy being president of the United States.
But it says here an interview. He doesn't do interviews. He
does.
talks to no one. He speaks to no one.
Yes, he does.
Oh, I guess I was mistaken about that. Donald Trump, out of nowhere, baselessly predicted that Joe Biden, the aforementioned Joseph Robinette Biden, might try to crash the Democratic National Convention and attempt to take back the nomination from Kamala Harris because he hates everybody and he hates the party and he hates her. So, yeah, guy's nuts.
The Arizona grand jury that indicted 18 Trump allies on criminal charges related to their efforts to overturn the 2020 election also wanted to indict Trump. The Attorney General's office, however, asked the grand jury not to indict Trump and gave a PowerPoint presentation to explain a Justice Department policy that it discourages bringing state and federal cases against the same defendant. And I'm not really alarmed by this. This is a prosecutor's decision to go after the little fish and get a conviction and not turn it into a circus because Trump's involved, and to save that battle for another day. That's what it's about. They are choosing to limit the scope of their prosecution.
Yeah.
But it says a lot about the evidence that the grand jury saw, that the grand jury, who are citizens, not prosecutors, wanted to indict Trump.
Yep. As do we all, Blue Gal.
As do we all.
Here's the name of a citizen named Lorraine Pellegrin. She's unlike us in this way. She's an Arizona Republican who falsely claimed to be a legitimate presidential elector for Trump, and she pleaded guilty for her role in the scheme to subvert the 2020 election.
All right. J.D. Vance says he'll debate Kamala Harris? I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absurd. Don't believe anything any Republican says about debates. Just don't. They lie all the time. Nothing is real until the curtain goes up and the TV cameras come on.
Yeah, that's it. Then you know something's actually happening.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you remember this, Blue Gal, about 1,000 years ago when Donald Trump shit the bed at the National Association of Black Journalists event in Chicago. So long ago, people barely remember it. It turns out Donald Trump lied about the AV problems leading to that train wreck of an interview. He was refusing to go on stage because they were going to fact check him and point out when he was lying. And he doesn't like going places where people call him out for lying.
Yep. Donald Trump's advisor, Stephen Miller, was warned he was close to defamation after a bizarre tirade. Guess where it was? Stephen Miller's tirade was on MSNBC. On MSNBC, Stephen Miller suggested Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the, quote, #1 traffickers of girls into sex slavery on planet Earth. And the host warned him that he may be guilty of defamation by saying that. That was Ari Melber. Ari Melber stepped in after Miller launched his rant in a discussion about the aftermath of January 6th. Hey, Ari, we got an idea for you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have Nazis on your show.
Yeah. Cuts way down on this sort of problem.
Yep.
And that's what, this is another example of the only reason they go on the air is to throw bombs.
Yeah, right.
And then they have their little clip they can play on their own little networks that doesn't have any of the refutations or the shutdowns.
Right. And say, look, we showed MSNBC and told the truth. We went in the lion's den and told the truth, quote unquote. Yes.
They don't like the truth over there. And, just stop it. He's not going to stop it because he's not that sort of person. He's a ratings whore. But that's why we're not watching MSNBC.
Right.
Taylor Swift canceled her Eras Tour concert in Vienna after a terrorist plot was thwarted and arrests were made. And that's just really unfortunate. I'm glad no one was hurt. I'm glad she's fine. Really unfortunate that the tour was canceled. and we wish her well and hope to see her at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago.
Come on down. In local news, the Sangamon County, Illinois, and that's where we live. Sangamon County is where Springfield is. Their board meeting for the county has been moved from their smaller digs, because I don't know, how many people do they usually have at a Sangamon County board meeting? Maybe
7,
20,
9,
20
something
maybe
like that.
max, topped out. Well, turns out there's going to be a whole lot of people at the next one. And they had to move from their smaller digs to one of the large rooms at the Bank of Springfield Arena.
Mm-hmm.
The reason being that the murder of Sonia Massey by a Springfield police officer.
Yep.
And the calls for the sheriff of Sangamon County to resign over it.
Yep.
This was a sheriff's deputy who shot her in her home.
And the story just keeps getting worse and worse for the
gosh.
sheriff's department. This is from ABC News in Chicago. Sheriff to continue in position despite J.B. Pritzker, our governor, calls for resignation after Sonia Massey's murder. Sangamon County Sheriff Jack Campbell said he will stay in his position despite Governor J.B. Pritzker's call for him to resign following the shooting death of Sonia Massey. Former Sangamon County Deputy Sean Grayson shot and killed Massey inside her Springfield home in July after Massey called 911 to report a possible intruder. The governor spoke on Wednesday, that's yesterday, at a bill signing press conference in Chicago. Quote, I called for the sheriff's resignation because the sheriff has failed, Pritzker said. He has failed to explain how he ended up hiring this deputy who'd been fired from other departments. Pritzker also blasted Campbell for not meeting with the Massey family. I'm not saying that it's a fireable offense not to meet with them, but that seems outrageous to me. At a minimum, to listen to them, hear them, and hopefully take action, the governor said.
Yeah. Well, you know, this thin blue line where you just keep the white supremacists all together, that's what happens.
Yep.
And then he has a gun and a badge, and he's called in to help her. He was in her home because she thought that an intruder had broken in.
Yeah, she followed the rules and did what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yep. And he murdered her, straight up.
And he murdered her in cold blood.
Uh-huh.
I mean, just absolutely. Governor J.B. Pritzker on Wednesday signed into law a trio of measures aimed at expanding protections for reproductive and gender-affirming health care. Now, I really love this quote. This is our governor. We can't wait around and be reactive when the latest attacks come. The pro-choice majority in this country needs to be proactive, Pritzker said at a news conference Wednesday, calling the new laws anticipatory.
Yeah, we know what they're going to do. We know what
we
they're
know
going to try.
what kind of bullshit that the J.D. Vances of this world want to put control over all of us. And they're going to start with the weakest. And so J.B. Pritzker is putting up some serious guardrails in terms of legislation to stop it before it starts.
Yep. And we have a butter cow. So, you know.
And he unveiled the butter cow today. You know, it's kept in a refrigerator, big with glass windows, so you can look at it and it doesn't melt.
All right. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an internet kitty sent in by you, the listener. Of course, this week we didn't have one sent in by the listeners. We went and grabbed one from Tim Walz's Twitter page. We did. This week's internet kitty is Honey. Honey is the cat belonging to Tim Walz and family. Welcome to Internet Kittydom, Honey. And of course, Honey eats freshly poured pet food. Our fake sponsor. Whether you serve pet store perfection or dollar store dreck, your rescue cat will sit on the kitchen floor of the Naval Observatory and demand that the Secret Service put down some freshly poured.
Damn it.
Freshly poured, oh my Lord, it's freshly poured.
And you can visit Honey at our Facebook page or website, proleftpod.com. And you can send your internet kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We would love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go postal unions. Go all the unions. Go the AFL-CIO. Go UAW. All you
Teamsters. Teamsters, baby.
All you guys endorsing Kamala Harris for president, because you know what side of the bread is buttered on your side of the bread.
Go podcaster unions.
I did really well with that one. You know what side your bread is buttered on. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah,
All
from
right.
the butter cow. That's where we get the bread.
No, don't cut it off the butter cow. We need that for another week.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll read your letter on the air unless you say otherwise.
Yeah, if you tell us not to, we won't. But if you don't tell us not to, we reserve the right to go ahead and talk about you. We won't reveal your last name or your political affiliations. We assume you're a liberal.
But we read every single thing you send.
We do. We really do.
And one of our listeners had a good day in gambling circles this week and shared their largesse with us. And that was very nice. Thank you for that.
Wow. What is it? What does they say? Money won is twice as sweet as money earned, honey.
I guess so.
Yeah. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guidelines. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. It's not charity because this is actually our job. And if you can spare $5 a month, please spare $5 a month at patreon.com/ProLeftPod. Another thing that will help out enormously is please share our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, and we know you do, please get someone else to listen to. And thank you so much for doing that. We really appreciate it.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties just know that Tim Walz uses his farm and home discount card to buy freshly poured cat food.
Yeah. I also heard that he wants to know before he lights the grill outside how many people want hot dogs and how many want hamburgers.
Who wants burgers? Who wants it? And, of course, for my darling daughter, the vegan burgers, the
Impossible Burger. We put that on first,
sure, we just want everyone to be happy and well fed. That's all we want.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
Professional Left Podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.